It is 8:42 on a Saturday evening. A dinner table. 12 people, one restaurant, one birthday. One guest has his phone out before the appetizers arrive, countdown sticker, angled food shots, a glance down to check who's viewed the story so far. By the end of the night, 8,000 strangers have seen fragments of that dinner. The 12 people actually sitting at the table got considerably less of him than they were promised. There was one guest who never took out his phone, who talked, who remembered things people had told him months earlier, who left without a single photo to show for it. The birthday person texted him the next morning just to say it mattered that he came. Nobody texted the guy with 8,000 followers. To understand that gap, we need to look at something almost nobody examines about the decision to simply not post. Somewhere along the way, not sharing a moment became suspicious. If you don't post the dinner, the trip, the achievement, people quietly wonder what's wrong. Are you hiding something? Are you struggling? Are you simply not living a life worth showing? Psychology has spent the last several years studying this, and it's found something that should reshape how you see the quiet ones in your life. People who post less often score higher on self-concept clarity. They tend to run on internal validation rather than external approval. They're frequently more private, more self-aware, less swayed by comparison. This is mostly told as a story about psychological health, inner peace, quiet confidence, and for many people it genuinely is. But there is a piece of this story that almost never gets told, and it has nothing to do with feelings. Every photo posted online doesn't just exist for the people who see it. It becomes something else first. Data, engagement, advertising inventory. Before a single friend likes that photo, a system has already used it to learn what holds your attention, to decide what to show you next, to sell that attention to someone else. Not posting was never just a personal preference. Everything seemed like a quiet personality trait until the actual mechanics of where that photo goes started to matter. Here's the first piece of this that rarely gets named. A photograph once posted stops belonging entirely to the person who took it. Psychologists describe something called psychological ownership, the sense that a memory, a thought, an experience belongs deeply to you. The moment you post it, that ownership begins to fracture. It becomes shared property, open to interpretation, open to judgment. But it doesn't only become shared with the people who see it. It becomes raw material for the platform that hosts it. Picture the actual mechanics of what happens after a photo is posted. It is not simply displayed, it is processed, analyzed for engagement potential, surfaced to an algorithm that decides who sees it and for how long, used to refine a profile of your interests that gets sold indirectly to advertisers who never meet you. Not a private memory anymore, a data point, not just shared with friends, licensed to a business model. Not your story being told, your story being monetized, quietly, on your behalf, without a single conversation about it. This is the part of the equation that conversations about privacy and self-esteem almost always skip. Not posting isn't only protecting a sense of self, it is also structurally declining to hand over free material to a system that profits from exactly that material. But here is where the story takes a darker turn, because the system doesn't just take the material, it also engineers the impulse to keep handing it over. Ask yourself this: if posting was simply neutral self-expression, why does a study from the Journal of Consumer Research find that people who merely anticipate sharing an experience enjoy it measurably less than people who don't? That finding deserves a second look. The damage doesn't happen when you post. It happens before you've even taken the photo. The moment your mind starts packaging an experience for an audience instead of simply living inside it. This is not an accident of human nature. It is, in part, a designed outcome. Every like, every comment, every notification is built around the same reward mechanism that drives other compulsive behaviors. The platform isn't simply hosting your moments, it is training your nervous system to need an audience in order to feel like something happened at all. The moment was real before it was shared. It does not become more real after. Posting doesn't preserve a memory. Sometimes it interrupts the only one you were forming. This reframes the suspicion aimed at people who don't post. They are often described as private or self-aware, or simply old-fashioned. What's rarely said is that, intentionally or not, they have opted out of an arrangement most people never agreed to in writing, handing over their most personal moments as unpaid material for a system that turns attention into revenue. Some arrived at that decision through hard experience, heartbreak, burnout, a moment of vulnerability that went unrewarded or ignored. That path deserves to be named honestly, without romanticizing it into pure enlightenment. Not every quiet person got there through wisdom. Some got there through pain. But whatever the path, the outcome is the same. They kept something that the rest of the system was quietly built to extract. Stay with me, because what comes next is the part almost nobody puts into words. Here is the truth sitting underneath the entire psychology of this behavior. The world was told that not posting means you have something to hide or nothing exciting to show. The structural reality says something closer to the opposite. Every photo posted becomes a small transaction, your private moment exchanged for visibility, processed quietly into a business asset you never get paid for and rarely think about. The world calls choosing not to post withholding. Psychology calls it psychological ownership, intact. The platform, if it were honest about its own incentives, would probably call it a loss of inventory. This is not a moral argument against posting. Plenty of sharing is genuine, connective, joyful. The point is narrower and more useful than that. The decision to keep something unposted is not merely a personality quirk worth diagnosing. It is also, quietly, one of the only remaining ways an ordinary person can withhold something of value from a system explicitly engineered to take it. For years, this dimension of the decision went almost entirely unnamed, not because the mechanism was hidden, because almost nobody benefits from naming it out loud. What you don't sell, you still own. This isn't really a story about photos, it's a story about which parts of an ordinary life get quietly converted into product and which parts get to stay simply lived. Look at how often this pattern repeats beyond photos. Fitness trackers converting your body into data, smart speakers converting your conversations into training material, every free app converting your time into something sold elsewhere. The choice not to post a birthday dinner is a small, almost invisible version of a much larger pattern playing out across nearly every part of modern life. If you've ever quietly wondered why declining to post sometimes feels like relief rather than deprivation, this may be part of the answer. Some portion of you understood, long before you had the vocabulary for it, exactly what you were being asked to hand over. Most people will keep treating that instinct as shyness. Now you know it might be something closer to instinct for self-preservation. The restaurant is empty now. The chairs are stacked. The story countdown has long since expired and disappeared. What's left isn't the 8,000 views. It's a text the next morning from someone who simply remembered being there. That's the part that was never for sale.